Hello everybody. This video is probably going to be posted kind of off my normal schedule. I wanted to put out a video. I felt just inspired to put my voice out there in what I hope is a positive and constructive way. And if you haven't gathered from the title, this video is going to be about recent events, recent violent events. So, as many of you probably know, there was the recent assassination of Charlie Kirk, and there's also another recent school shooting, and there was the woman stabbed recently as well. Obviously, there's been a lot of violence before these events as well. I'm in the US, of course. But yeah, I just wanted to try to put out a message to try to help, just to try to be a part of the solution, I suppose. So just a warning, this is really the most, it's not really going to be, I'm going to try to not make this a political message. That's kind of my whole point. But I suppose you could say this is the most political type video that I've ever done. And I certainly don't plan to do these type of videos a lot on my channel. But I do have a wee small platform, and I just thought that I could maybe put a positive message out there, hopefully. So that is your warning about what this video is going to be about, and I'm going to try to make it positive. I'm going to try to make it a depolarizing video, a video to hopefully take down the intensity rather than ramp up the intensity. So that is my goal. But if you're not interested in watching this type of content for any reason, you can stop watching the video now. So, as many of you probably know, Charlie Kirk was assassinated, I think, 4 days ago now. I don't know. I'm not sure when I'll post this. 4 or 5 days ago, something like that. And there's, I mentioned there's also other violent things that have happened recently and well before that as well. There's obviously been a lot of gun violence in the US, and it's scary, and a lot of people in the US are feeling very scared and very threatened, understandably. So I have definitely I have really tuned in and kind of followed a lot of news and just mostly YouTube, like watched quite a lot of videos around, particularly around the recent assassination, just because it's been a really heavy topic, but I also find it to be, unfortunately, a topic of interest because I'm someone who's very interested in understanding humans, human behavior. I'm very interested in psychology, and I want what's best for people. I want peace. I don't want violence in this world. So even though it's a very dark, heavy, and sad topic, the topic of gun violence and all of this, I have been very interested in it and listening to a lot of different perspectives online. I feel anxious just talking about it. It's hard. It's hard to put I think it's scary to put your voice out around this topic because, as many of you probably see, there's a lot of very high emotions around this topic for totally understandable reasons, and people do not feel the same about it. Mainly, I would think due to mainly due to political differences. I think a lot of people, I hope that most people, especially Americans, can agree that murdering anybody is wrong and bad, and that we should do everything we can to say that that is unacceptable and that we don't support that, unless, of course, literally somebody is like actually murdering someone else and they're in the act of it. And the best way to prevent that, of course, is to use force as necessary to stop that. That makes sense to me. But obviously, I hope we can all agree, and I think it's a pretty I hope it's a pretty unifying message to say that I think we can all agree that it's wrong to murder somebody because you have different beliefs and opinions or values than them. So I think that that's what most Americans believe, hopefully, and most people in the world believe, hopefully. But yeah, the whole situation has just really, like many events before it, there's definitely been plenty of other events that have really gripped our country and brought out just a lot of emotion and differences of opinion and what feels like polarization. And yeah, I think what's really sad about this for me is I had actually watched quite a few hours of Charlie Kirk's content over the years, and I enjoyed watching it because he was somebody who was willing to have discussions and debates with people, and I love watching debates. I watch a lot of the channel called Jubilee. Maybe you've heard of that channel. They do a lot of like debates and discussions. They try to platform different perspectives. I watch quite a few other channels that also try to show different perspectives and have debates. So I also, I'm not a super political, I don't think I'm a super political person. And honestly, I view myself as pretty moderate politically, or it's like, I honestly don't even know. I don't know how. I really feel like I don't know how to identify. I'm not trying to identify politically, but I honestly I don't know. I feel like I don't have a good grasp on that. In certain circles, people would think I am liberal, probably. In certain circles, people would think I am conservative. I really don't know. I think the main thing that I think about myself is that I try to hold multiple perspectives at the same time. And I think for most political and social issues, I feel like I can understand pretty thoroughly both sides and be able to explain it. And I might lean, one way or the other, more so left or right on certain topics. But I feel like I can really understand the other perspective and explain it to somebody. And more than anything, I really do appreciate that our country is a democracy, and I know it's not perfect, and yeah, obviously it's not perfect, but the idea behind our country and a lot of countries is democracy, where you have, people with different views and different opinions, and hopefully we all get to talk and debate and listen to different perspectives and then vote. And again, I know it's not a perfect system. I know there's a bunch of money that corrupts the system. I know there's all these problems. But I'm really, I'm a fan of the idea of democracy. And I think, so yeah, it goes without saying that I think the murdering of a prominent political figure is a tragedy to democracy, whether or not you agreed with what Charlie Kirk believes, what he stands for. He was a prominent political voice, and I think he did a lot to to bring out political discourse in our country, and I think that that's something that we should aspire to more. I don't think it's good that people, I don't think it's good to hide your feelings and thoughts and only share them when you know you're in the company of people who think very similarly to you. I understand why people do that, and honestly, I do that quite a bit too. But I think it's really healthy to have conversations with each other, especially if we can try to do it from a place of curiosity and accepting potential differences of opinion and making other things more important, like the relationship and the things that we do have in common and things like that. So anyway, say this all to say, I had, over the year, I don't know, the first time I heard Charlie Kirk speak was probably like 6 or 7 years ago. And over the years, I've heard quite a few hours of him speaking. I don't know, 8 hours or so. I think I even watched an interview with him and his wife, and I have done the same for other political figures. I hear something downstairs. I've done the same for other people in politics, across the political spectrum. So, I try to listen to a range of voices, whether they're more conservative, liberal, independent, whatever. I mainly just find it interesting to listen to perspectives and really try to grapple with it myself, which is not always easy, because sometimes you don't always like what you hear, you don't agree with it, but that's why I really like hearing the debates. I like kind of hearing like two sides, if you will, or at least different perspectives. So I really appreciated that about what Charlie Kirk did, going to campuses and talking to students. No, I do not think that, I think he sometimes, it would sometimes be in an inflammatory manner, or he wouldn't always bring the calmest presence, But from the other perspective, I'm like, damn, if I were him in his shoes and I was going to college campuses with a bunch of kids who I knew, some of them might really hate me for being there or disagree with me, like, it would be stressful. And would I be able to always be the calmest person? Like, no. But I think overall, a lot of the way that he interacted with people was not horrible at all. I think there was a lot of times he interacted with people that was actually very respectful, even though he had very different views than some of the people that he welcomed debate with. So even though I if I haven't made it clear, I don't agree with everything that Charlie Kirk says and believes, but I really appreciated his efforts to try to have the dialogue, and more than anything, there's just a lot of diversity in our country. There's, different religions that people have, different political affiliations that people have. There's all sorts of differences, and I feel like, to me, it's important to try, even if I have certain things that I believe and I might think are right, I feel like it's important to try to make space for other people to share their perspectives too. And I know this conversation can get really heated, because I know a lot of people feel like certain perspectives are just not okay to have, or like certain words are violent and all of that. I understand that, but I think somebody committing acts of violence is absolutely different than somebody saying something that maybe by certain people is perceived as violent in some way, or perceived as could cause violence in some way. And the truth is I see things on both the right and the left, if you will, speech and statements and actions that I wouldn't necessarily call violent, because I think maybe that's too strong of a word, but are what's the way to say it, activating, they are adding more unnecessary charge to the situation. They are not making it better. So I don't want to say that, oh, I see people on both sides saying violent things or whatever, because I think we have to be a little careful with our words and not just think that everything that is said is violent, because I think that can be kind of part of the problem. But I'm saying I see on both sides. I think the way that people talk about things and they talk about the other side is really not helping. So I've seen a lot of this since the shooting. I've also seen, I think, people who are doing a really great job of spreading messages of hope and peace and unity, or trying their best to. For example, I saw like a short video from Bernie Sanders. Senator Bernie Sanders? Is he a senator? I think he's a senator. He had like a 4-minute video just saying that, violence and murder is wrong. Whether, no matter what side it comes from, whatever, that it's wrong. I think that's a really good message to put out there. I think also the Utah governor, maybe, or something, made a statement about the shooting because it was at the Utah University, I think. And I think he said something similar, that I think he tried to point out that it was, an issue that we see across the political spectrum. And wherever we see it, we need to say this is not okay and we don't stand for this as Americans. So I have definitely seen really positive, unifying messages like that, that's the type of message that I want to put out there now, because unfortunately too, I've also seen messages from both sides, the right and the left, that I think escalate. That is the word I was looking for earlier. Escalate tensions. And I believe what we should be doing in all times, but especially tense times like this, is trying to de-escalate tension and de-escalate conflict. So, I see from both sides, the right and the left, for example, that they think that there is more of a violence problem on the other side. So I've seen a lot of videos from people on the right saying that there is a problem with the left and violence, and understandable. But I also see people on the left saying that there is a problem with violence on the right. Also understandable, because both things are true. And I think what's important to focus on is the fact that both of those things are true. And I know some people are going to get really hung up on, like, oh, but it's more so this side, or it's more so that side. Is it? How do we know? And like, how do we exactly quantify that? And to me, it's just a lot of finger pointing. And, I don't know, maybe we can quantify it with data in a certain way, but then a lot of people are going to say, well, who came up with that data? Who funded that data? And I don't trust that data. And, all of these questions are valid questions, or, valid things to think about. Therefore, I just choose to believe that it is a shared issue, and I don't choose to say, oh, it's more so a problem on this side or that side. Violence is a problem in our country. It's a problem in the world. It probably always will be, unfortunately. But I think we have also made a lot of strides as a world, and I can only hope that will continue.
Hey everybody, I just wanted to add in, just because I didn't really make it clear, that I know I'm kind of conceptualizing things on a binary here with left and right, And obviously, I know it's not that simple. A lot of people don't necessarily identify in either of those groups, or maybe they identify as moderate or independent, or just something off of that. I think it is unfortunate that we have a two-party system, so that it doesn't really capture the diversity of people here. But anyway, I'm just using that for simplicity's sake moving forward in this video.
Obviously, a lot of things are better now than they have been at other points in history. It can feel like things are getting worse and scarier now, and maybe in some ways they are, but in a lot of other ways, I think they aren't. So, yeah, so I was saying that I have no organization to this video. I'm really just like talking off the top of my head, and I'm also nervous because this is a hard topic to talk about. So I'm doing my best here, and I hope you can all have grace for me. So, yeah, I have seen polarizing messages across the political spectrum around this recent topic, as well as everything else recently, and, in recent years and always. But I do think that technology and social media, of course, makes it more polarizing, and just in overall is ungrounding, because the the online world is not necessarily the real world. It has an element of reality in it, but it's not fully real. You know what I mean? It's like the difference between how you act when you're in your car versus when you're next to someone on the street. So I think that's kind of the issue with the online world, and I'm not at all against social media and the internet and all of that. It's just, with great power comes great responsibility. And, I think technology and social media is kind of like a drug in that sense, is that like it might, open up more possibilities or make you feel good or whatever. It gives you more access and freedom and information, and all that's good, but it's also, I feel like we have to be responsible with how we use it. So anyway, yeah, I've seen videos, a lot of videos and messages recently that I think escalate the conversation. And I've also seen ones that I think de-escalate the conversation. And I am trying to be somebody always. I'm obviously not perfect at it and never will be. But I really want to be someone who always tries to de-escalate situations whenever possible. So, what does that actually look like in practice? Well, that looks like in practice for me, not going around telling people that I think we're on the brink of a civil war. Because, to be honest, I don't truly think we are on the brink of a civil war. I could see how that could happen. Of course it could. It could happen even if things seemed so much better in this country. It could still happen. It's always a possibility. Do I think that our country's actually going to devolve that quickly and unexpectedly, and there's going to be mass violence in the streets, or like some significant government overreach, is unprecedented? Like, no, I don't believe that. And I also don't think it's helpful to come from such a place. It's understandable, but I don't think it's helpful, personally at least, for me to come from a place of fear and spread that fear to everyone else. Because, well, it's totally valid to have fear around this, and I'm sure many of us do, and a certain amount of fear is healthy. I don't think it's ideal to embody that fear and to kind of just spew it out there, because everybody is being affected by everybody. And so I don't want to go around acting from a place of fear, saying things that are extreme that I have no basis to know is actually likely to happen. It could. So I'm happy to acknowledge that things could get very much worse and scary in the US or anywhere. But I'm not the person that's like, oh yeah, this is going to happen. And I honestly feel like that becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I really feel like if we all are walking around triggered, and if we're all walking around freaked out and angry and hateful, do we really think that's going to end well? Do we think that's going to go well? If you are so worked up from things that you are seeing that you essentially are walking around with a loaded gun, not literally, but figuratively, like emotionally, you are walking around with a loaded gun where you just are distrustful of every person you see, or you're angry and you're thinking that, half the people in this country are the problem, and you don't trust them, and you could be in danger at any moment. I do not think that that's helping. And again, I understand. I really do. It takes, I think, a lot of focus and courage to have the very real and very human emotions that come up as a human, all throughout history, not just now. Things have been so much worse. But even now, times like this, a lot of people are scared, and I totally get it. But I find it really important to ask yourself, I ask myself all the time, like, is how I am acting, is it creating a better world, or is it part of the problem? And yeah, I don't want to take myself out in the world and go to the grocery store and interact with friends and all of this if I am walking around with a loaded gun. I'm going to try to do my best, like figuratively, not literally. I probably shouldn't use that word, the G word. I don't want this video to get banned or whatever, but yeah, I'm just saying I am going to try to do my best to take accountability for my emotional state. I'm going to try to walk out in the world with an open heart. Still be cautious, of course, not be naive. Be cautious, have a certain degree of vigilance, especially as a mother with a child and also pregnant right now. But I want to walk out in the world also displaying and showing to other people a certain amount of trust, certain amount of friendliness, respect, as best I can, unless I'm truly having a horrible day. If I lost someone I love and I'm in a horrible state of grief, I'm not going to expect myself to like put on a smile and whatever. I know I'm going to be wearing sunglasses and I'm going to be crying all day. Like if I was the wife of Charlie Kirk and I lost my husband, I would be a mess. I'm not saying I expect people who have just gone through their own immense tragedies to go out in the world and be a beacon of hope. But my life is relatively safe and happy and privileged. So I'm going to do everything I can to be part of the solution, to convey love to people, to convey trust to people, to convey healthy human connection to people. So that's part of how I am trying, and I'm thinking about how I can try to make the world a better place all the time, but especially in times like this where people are heightened. Another thing that I'm really going to try to do, and I hope you all think this is a good idea too, you can take it or leave it, but when I do talk with people in my life about stuff like this, about political stuff, which I honestly don't that often, but sometimes it comes up with friends and family, I am going to really try, and I already do try this, but I'm going to try even harder to be very careful and specific and nuanced in my language. Because one thing that I've seen a lot of online lately from both the right and the left is that when they refer to the other side, they just say the right or the left. And then they say something honestly kind of hateful, like, oh, the left has a real problem with violence, or the right has a real problem with violence, or, both sides also think that the other side is overly authoritarianism, right? It's like both sides have the same complaints about the other side, which is kind of crazy and funny and sad. But it's the truth. It's the truth. You see it from both sides. They have a lot of the same complaints about the other side. And a lot of them, what I hear a lot of people saying is they just say that side, which it's like, you guys, you have to realize this is basically 50% of our country. Our country is about 50-50 split on politics. And I know that it's a spectrum. I know it's a spectrum, and a lot of people don't necessarily identify as one or the other, or they try to somehow fit on that spectrum. Just for reference, that's kind of what I've been saying, is like, I don't really view myself on that spectrum a whole lot, but just to try to explain myself to you all, I guess if I had to, I would say I'm more so in the middle, or I try to understand both sides. So I think it's hard, and I think again that it's escalating and it's further polarizing when if you do happen to be more so on one side or the other, if you use language that encapsulates the whole other side of the spectrum, because you do need to realize you're talking about half of the country. So if you say that the right has a problem with violence, or that the left has a problem with violence, you're talking about half of the country. You're talking about half of the neighbors on your street. You're talking about half of your family, or people's families in general. You're talking about half of the people in your workplace. Do you really mean to say that? Do you really believe that? Do you really believe that half of the people in this country are bad people? Maybe you do. Maybe you do, and like, that's totally your right to believe that. But I don't think that's a healthy belief to hold. And even if you do think that half of the people are the problem and are seriously the problem, still, I would say, ask yourself, okay, how do we solve that? How do we solve that problem if it's true that half the country, whether it's the left or the right, if half the country is the problem, how do we solve that? I think it still comes back to what I'm trying to do. Obviously, this is my channel, this is my bias, but I think the solution is still, if you think that the half the country is the problem, you still, I believe, have to embody what you think the solution is. And I think the only way you can do that is by being the example. If you want there to be peace in the world, you need to be peaceful yourself. I mean, right? You know what I mean? And I know there's, maybe that doesn't work in every situation. If someone's literally at your door with a weapon trying to end your life, I understand that maybe that situation's a little different. But that is not what we're talking about here, obviously. We're talking about political divides and social divides. So even if you think that half of the country, for example, is the problem, I still think it's our responsibility to set an example, to be the bigger people, to do everything that we can to try to promote the values that we try to espouse. And I know it's not easy, but it's our responsibility as adults. What else was I going to say? Oh, I was going to say I think a lot about, it's easier for me to conceptualize. I'm honestly not a political I don't think of myself as a super political person. I'm not really very good with world history. I'm not even good with US history. I listen to a lot of stuff, but it's not my realm. I'm really, if you haven't gathered from watching my channel, I'm really interested in psychology. I'm interested in human dynamics, human relationships. I'm interested in emotions, all of that. So it's easier for me to conceptualize a lot of what I'm saying on a smaller scale. So, for example, I think about a couple. Let's just pretend it's me and my husband. Me and my husband are going to have disagreements that come up, like in any relationship. We are going to have disagreements that come up, and I think about how we can solve those disagreements and how we can try our best to peacefully coexist together, to build things, to build a better world, a better future. And I think about that a lot, kind of, how that looks on a bigger scale, like for our country, for example, and the political landscape. And so, yeah, this is where I really believe that it is not, for the most part, it's not, I don't think it's a healthy practice to other, people who you see as different from yourself and to point the finger at them and to focus all of your energy saying that they're the problem and they need to change. It's understandable. We all do it. We all do it in our personal relationships, and we all do it in the world at large. But I don't think it's helpful. And for example, if back to the individual, back to the relational level, like if me and my husband are having a lot of conflict, and for example, if we went to see a couples counselor, a marriage counselor, the advice would be that we need to find a way to listen to each other. We need to find a way to find common ground. We need to find a way to de-escalate. No couples counselor would say that the solution is to keep pointing the finger at the other person and point out why they're wrong and why you're right. Like that's not getting anywhere. So, that's how I'm, that's how I conceptualize in a lot of ways, like what's happening in the bigger world. I think about it as if it were on a smaller scale, and that feels a lot more manageable and makes a lot more sense to me. And I didn't quite get this point across, but what I was trying to say earlier is one of the other ways that I am personally trying to de-escalate just the tension in the world in whatever ways that I can is by when I am having if I am having an actual more like political discussion with a friend or family member, I'm going to try to do my best to use very specific nuanced language. So for example, I would not say, because I also do not believe, I would not say, oh yeah, I think the right, really has a problem with violence, or I think the right are all bigots, or I think the left has a real problem with violence, or I think the left are all whatever, fill in the blank. Because like I said, that's talking about half of people, and that to me seems extreme and unhelpful to say. So I, for example, would say, more so something like, there is a small minority of people on both sides that are really unstable. Maybe I would use the word fringe, like people on the fringe left, people on the fringe right. Let's be honest, there are people who are mentally unwell to the degree where it really affects other people on both sides, obviously. Like I don't know who could really disagree with that. And extreme hate shows up in many forms, but I do not think it is the majority of people. I choose to believe that the majority of people do not want that, and I really believe that part of being the solution is also speaking that into existence, because I think the more we go around saying, no, a lot of people are really hateful and a lot of the world is really messed up, that just kind of pushes that narrative and spreads that contagion. So, I think there's a way we can say it and acknowledge it that's true, that also creates a solution, which is that, yeah, that does exist in the world. Obviously, it always has, it probably always will, but let's not push onto each other that that's most people, or it's all of this group or all of this group. So I'm going to try to continue to be really careful with my language, not use generalizations. And obviously, I've been talking mostly about like the right and the left, but this goes for any group of people. If you're talking about a religious group of people, if you're talking about a gender group of people, if you're talking about a racial group of people, I know that we can speak in generalizations. We can make generalizations about women versus men, but I still find it really helpful to acknowledge that it's a generalization. Sometimes I do make generalizations, like all the time. I might make generalizations about men or women to friends and family in my life, but I try to acknowledge it's a generalization, unless I know that they know and I don't need to like say it every time, because I don't want to be out there painting with a broad brush and creating stereotypes, because nobody always fits neatly in one box, and there literally are as many different perspectives in this world as there are people. So, yeah, I try to do my best to be more nuanced and specific with my language. It's more work, it's more words. And I know some people would think, why is that necessary? Why do we have to be so thoughtful? Why do we have to be so careful? Well, you don't, but I personally find that when you do, you have better interactions with people. You create more space for understanding, for respect, for curiosity, for compassion, for progress. So, yeah, that's why I try to use thoughtful, nuanced language, even though it might sometimes sound annoying and I might be providing a lot of caveats and a lot of nuance, but that's what I choose to do because I am trying to de escalate situations in the world, and people are very complex, and I think sometimes we need a lot to really understand where someone's coming from. And also, there's a lot of other things that are important to go along with communication as well, like tone of voice, body language, the pace at which you are speaking, facial expressions. So it's kind of obvious, but when I'm trying to have difficult conversations with people in my life, whether it's about interpersonal issues or political issues, which doesn't happen a lot for me, but sometimes does, I try to get myself in as calm of a state as possible. Even if I don't feel calm, I don't feel calm right now, but I am doing my best to regulate all of those things I mentioned, my tone of voice, my facial expressions. I'm doing my best to convey a sense of calm and safety, because we all are reading off of each other as humans, and I'm trying to put a positive energy out into the world. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I want to say about this situation, this whole topic. Mainly just wanted to focus on the fact that I think it comes back to us. It all comes back to us. And I think the best that we can do is really look at our own behavior and ask ourselves, do an inventory and ask ourselves if we can find any ways that we can show it better, show it more peaceful, more understanding, more open, even if you have a very different view than someone in your life or someone in the world. How can you be the change? If you think, man, I really wish I could change this person's mind, or I wish I could change the minds of half of the country, how can you be that change? That's great. I welcome diversity of thought and opinion. I really do. But what I am not trying to promote is intensity of emotion and intensity of action. I don't want people's actions to be intensified in a negative and violent way, obviously. So, yeah, that's really what I wanted to say. I'm trying to think if there's more examples of like ways that I'm trying to de-escalate myself in general, and when I'm having potentially political discussions with people. I think I kind of covered the main things. Asking questions, I guess that's a good one. Asking questions, and I think bringing empathy to the other side, to the other person's perspective if they have a different perspective. Because I think it's often, if we really slow ourselves down and think about it, I think we can understand and hold multiple perspectives at once. Like, for example, I was listening to Charlie's wife's address to the nation or something like that. Her name's Erica Kirk, and she gave like an address to the nation like 2 or 3 days after he was murdered, and it was really, of course, very sad to listen to. While I was listening to it, I felt like I was able to hold multiple perspectives. I was able to be like, oh my god, this poor woman, like, this is just absolutely tragic and wrong and awful. And I felt like I could truly hear everything she said, and I could be like, yes, I think that's beautiful. Everything she's saying, I feel like it's beautiful and it's coming from her heart, and I could see how much she was trying to continue to do the work that she feels is best in this world. And I could really see that fully and really appreciate that. And then when I was also, as I was watching her address to the nation, I could also see how a lot of other people might listen to her same, address to the nation that I was watching right there, and feel very threatened by it, and feel very scared by it, and feel that things are going to get worse and going to escalate, and just really take a very different message from it. So I feel like it's important to try to have understanding and empathy, and to try to hold multiple perspectives, because I feel like having a nuanced approach is important. I don't feel like it's healthy to, consume something and just be like, well, I don't know how anybody could only, the only way that I saw that was this way, like, it's like, I think, it's valid to have different responses to something, but I think it's ultimately the most helpful to try to really understand multiple perspectives. And I think we can do that on our own. I think we can do it with other people, try to put ourselves in other people's shoes, so my cat wants out of the room, and it is late at night. I am coming to you late at night, honestly, just kind of on the fly. Just had a shower and my hair is up. I'm about to go to bed. This is how I do my hair at night. So anyway, I think that is all I wanted to say. I welcome you to share your thoughts in the comments. I may or may not respond to everything, whatever I get, I'm not sure. But anyway, I am sending you all peace, love, beauty, and harmony. That is what I always say in my videos. That is all I'm trying to do here as well. And yeah, I will catch you all in another video sometime. Okay, bye.